Thank you. And good afternoon. I'll start today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the country upon which we meet, the Mawanina people, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. And I'd also like to pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who either join us in the room or are with us online. Lawrence, thank you for that presentation. You said right at the start people here may be wondering why a master's student is here. I think all of us in the room that are involved in research know that that's the right and proper thing for master's students to be doing, so fantastic to have you and your colleague with us. Today I'm talking about implementing an Antarctic Regional Climate Centre. My name's Robert Argent. I come from the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors, Scott Carpentier, also from Australia's Bureau of Meteorology, Steve Colwell, who numbers of you will probably know from the Antarctic Survey, and also Vito Vitali from INRC in Italy. And hopefully I'm pushing the right button. Thank you. So I'm going to start today a little bit of context about the World Meteorological Organization. So WMO has regional climate centres around the world, some 30, 40, 50 regional climate centres. These undertake a range of specified tasks. They deliver products, they coordinate data, they undertake prediction work. And the WMO particularly has committed a number of years ago to establishing an Antarctic Regional Climate Centre network. So that's where a network implies a virtual centre. Many of the regional climate centres around the globe are location-based. In a particular city or area, the network is a virtual centre. So in general, WMO operates in a regional structure. So around the globe there are 6 regions. Each of those regions has many countries that are members of that regional or of that regional association. And those members, I should also note, they view that as coverage of most of the world, but it's actually only north of 60 south. So when we get down to the Antarctic and Southern Ocean region, it becomes somewhat complicated. Now, those of you who experienced in Antarctic work know that often these things become a little bit complicated when you get into multi-country activities. So WMO members, and I use the capital M for members there, those are the countries that are signed up to the WMO. Through the requirements of WMO, they actually have to undertake specific actions. So things like exchanging data, disseminating services, there are requirements on members to undertake these actions, and that's the power, some of the power that WMO actually has to support coordination and global work around meteorology and hydrology. And that coordination of local activities often occurs through the NMHS, the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, although as most of you in the room would be aware, these are often not the lead agency involved in Antarctic matters. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between what your National Meteorological, Hydrological and Cryospherical Agency might be doing and what you might be interested in as an Antarctic operator. Now, what's an RCC? Getting down to the details of a regional climate centre, there are 4 mandatory functions of regional climate centres. One is around data, so that's around developing long-term climate data sets, so looking at the change, the history of climate, and providing those data sets, making them available. There's the actual monitoring, so establishing reference climatologies and undertaking diagnostics. And then there's the prediction, so looking forwards, predictions, verifying, interpreting, assessing predictions, and then undertaking regional seasonal forecasts through a consensus-based approach. There's also a function around training, so training in the use, in the appropriate and proper use of the products and services produced by the WMO members. There are also optional, from the WMO's perspective, optional services, but many that are possibly even more important than the ones above that can be undertaken by an RCC, such as work on ice extent. So just a few slides now on the scoping of the Antarctic RCC. So some of this work was started a number of years ago. So in 2018, the WMO undertook a survey of its members and, undertook a survey of the members that were parties to the treaty. And so there were some reasonably high level of response to those surveys, just looking at what was the level of interest in those members in the functions that an RCC might perform. Some, I guess, reflection that there was already many of the countries, many of those members were performing some of those functions already for the Antarctic region or for sub-areas of the Antarctic region. And also there were numbers of those countries put their hands up to express interest in contributing to that RCC effort. And they also expressed high interest in undertaking other functions beyond those that are the mandatory functions. And here's the list of countries that actually put their hands up, expressed interest at that stage. That was in 2018. And many of those we have continuing involvement and dialogue with around the next steps that we're doing, and I'll get onto that in a few slides' time. So, yeah, quite a number of countries active in Antarctic that are interested in involvement in establishing and running an Antarctic Regional Climate Centre. So that initial investigation, that initial survey, was followed up in 2019 with a scoping workshop, and that built on those survey results and then started to work into the concept of how an Antarctic Regional Climate Centre network would actually operate. So what would be the provisional structure, what are the priority functions, how we would go about implementation, what are some of those other non-mandatory but highly valuable functions that could be performed by the RCC. Try again. That followed up in the pandemic times with development of a concept note. That concept note included in it the members' needs and capacities. And as I said before, for many of us, our Antarctic Operating Agency is possibly disconnected, maybe in the same department, maybe in a different ministry, maybe completely separated from the Weather, Meteorological and Hydrological Agency. Sometimes even your meteorological and hydrological agencies are in different parts of government. So the needs that are expressed in the current concept note reflect some, but not necessarily all of the interests that you might be able to represent, that the people in the room here might represent, in terms of RCC services that might be of interest in Antarctic. The concept note also covered some of the issues around structure and governance, how we would work together, what the products and services would be. This then went through an approvals process within the WMO structure. Its intent after that is to develop an implementation plan, and that work was then impacted for a few years through both the effects of the pandemic as well as organisational changes that were occurring in WMO at the time. This was, I guess, at its heart, the way that the RCC was conceptualised was to have 3 nodes, so one node around climate prediction, with the lead coordination by the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia, looking at the long-range forecasting services by the RCC, a climate monitoring area led by INRC, looking at the climate monitoring work, and then a climate data node. And those latter two, the monitoring node and the data node, reflect a lot of work that is already underway. And I also must emphasise, in regards to the the climate data node, where the lead coordinator is through the British Antarctic Survey, is that only is a reflection of current functions only. So there are a significant amount of data management functions undertaken by BATS already, and there has been commitment through Steve Colwell for at least a continuation of those functions. Not necessarily, this doesn't indicate a formal acceptance by BATS of an ongoing role in that area. So Steve wanted me to assure people of that, and the next steps, which I'll get onto in a moment, will cover how we go about getting long-term commitment and who the operators might be for some of these components. Also part of the implementation planning has been some significant lessons learned from the Arctic RCC. So Arctic RCCs are about 2 or 3 years ahead of the Antarctic RCC network. They have done a significant amount of work on harmonisation and consistency across the pan-Arctic domain. They have taken an approach where all their products and services come through a single platform. They've got very strong partnership across the meteorological and hydrological agencies that are involved there. And they also have set up 2 times per year a climate forum. So they bring together a forum of people to look at the seasonal climate outlook and also to get feedback and understand the needs and requirements, and improve the work and the forecasting that is needed. And there's very strong support also around data sharing and data access, which is very familiar to all of those involved in the Antarctic as well. So post-pandemic, we kicked off this work again with a planning meeting hosted in Melbourne, Australia last December. There we worked through some of the technical details and started to get into the implementation planning for this and next year. And there were a range of people involved in that work. And I guess some of the fundamentals are we want to continue the work that's already underway. So there's fantastic data sharing, data coordination work that is already underway. We also want to understand who's who in the Antarctic space, and that's part of why I'm here today and the next few days, just to listen and take on board, understand how this space works. We also want to understand the existing relevant activities and how we connect in and pull those together, and also raise awareness amongst potential users of the development of the services through the Regional Climate Centre network. So, a number of you might be sitting there going, so what's in it for me? So for my Antarctic operations, of course various countries, as I noted earlier from the survey, already perform a range of these functions in isolation, and there's already really good networks around research, around data management and data sharing. So what I'd like to hear from you, as I said, I'm over here over the next couple of days, either get in touch via email, come and see me, come and tell me what your thoughts are, what your interests are in what an Antarctic Regional Climate Centre network could do for you. For those that know Scott or Vito or Steve, also please get in touch with them and let them know your thoughts as well. And where are we going from here? So the way forward, developing a technical plan, an architecture that pulls together the incredible amount of work that is already underway and already done in this space. We're wanting to reignite some of the engagement with the focal points and with the members, so through the network that WMO does have globally, and then develop an implementation plan where we get down to the specifics of the roles and resources that we need, activities and timelines, and then move to a first regional outlook forum, including the demonstration of some of the products that would be developed. Thank you.